So you're telling me the queen who monologued about the copywritten ruby red slippers in All-Star 6, who has an entire Glinda number at the Drag Race Vegas live show, won the Wicked Challenge? Hold the phone. Mind blown, I tell you. Hi, hello everyone. Let's get into Drag Race All-Star 7. All-Star 7? Hi, hello everyone. Let's get into Drag Race All-Stars 10, episode 7. And I want to remind myself and you, this is a TV show. It's a TV show. I have so many opinions on this episode, but let's start with some compliments and then some criticism. So buckle in. Ginger Minj is an incredible queen and almost won Drag Race Season 7 and All-Star 6 for a reason. She has buckets of charisma, she has great storytelling abilities, a fantastic personality, and she's really good at drag. Ginger 100% is not a queen that requires production meddling to help scoot her forward in a competition. Bosco in this season is very much the same kind of queen, someone who's just really good at what they do, and they don't need assistance. Queens like Georges and Mistress of this season are really great at the lanes that they're good at, but they do in fact need some assistance in their trajectory forward. They need challenges and runways catered to their specific skills, and edits catered to them to color their overall performance in the competition. Mostly in a positive light, unless they self-sabotage. Like what Mistress did, but that's a different story. I'm referencing these specific queens because they're current, but I could go on of a list from all the way back to All-Stars 1, I mean hell, even back to Season 5, who are really good at what they do, but wouldn't stand out as much as frontrunners if production was not putting their little fingers all over the pie. And they probably wouldn't stand out as being better than the group if challenges and runways were not catered to their specific skills. Ginger is not that kind of queen. She is genuinely really good at Drag Race, even in the challenges that she's not very good at. In Glamazonian Airways, Ginger was the winner of that challenge, despite maybe Trixie and Max having a more magnetic performance. But Ginger just had this it thing that was undeniable to reward. And Ginger has done that multiple times. It doesn't confuse me that Ginger was supported in this bracket. It actually makes perfect sense to me that she was favored. Much like a lot of other queens who are on the winner trajectory, they're really good at what they do. They're great representations of the Drag Race brand. They're really great marketing, and they're exactly what producers want to see in their winners. And those people generally get pushes. And I can only assume that they really want to see what she's gonna do for Snatch Game and that inevitable lip sync SmackDown, because Ginger, realistically, is one of the best lip syncers of the entire franchise. I'm not even gonna fight anybody in the comments. Ginger has exceeded expectations in a lot of different ways for what people thought she'd be able to do, and through the various All-Stars, has made a lasting impact in what she can do when it is time to emote, in the same way that like Latrice has done. What specifically bothers me, and here's where we get to the criticism, and this is not about Ginger, it's about Drag Race. This space that is held so that one queen comes out shining brighter than the others is not often given to others in the competition. Others are treated like these stoogey bricks that they can just toss around. Dominoes that are meant to fall down in a certain timing so that one winner can rise up above all of them. When queens come through those doors, they're not supported, either via challenge or by their edit. And I know that you're thinking, well, they can't cater to everyone, and that is true. They simply can't cater to everyone. They're going to cater to the people that they want to move forward. It makes sense to me why you would do that. I've always maintained that Drag Race is a semi-scripted reality show. I think they know exactly what they want to happen, and the show is written in a way that makes that happen. Sometimes people like Kylie exceed expectations, because I don't think she was on the vision board to win. Sometimes people like Anya exceed expectations. I think they wanted Sam to win. Some of these queens that are on the vision board are given challenges that are tailored to what they do. They're given runway prompts that are easy to get and not miss. Whereas a lot of other contestants are thrown into these challenges that they're simply not good at, and they're held to extremely high standards on the runway. Let's say that these queens got an 8-ball type of challenge. take a bunch of crap and then make something. Ginger would not have succeeded in the same way, especially seeing what she's able to do with construction when given materials. I think she would have a great story, but I don't think it would be visually very whoa. Maybe in the same way that her costume was in the Hello Kitty ball in season 7. Seeing production throw a bone her way in making this not only a pairing challenge so that her sewing skills are supported by somebody else, but also a storytelling challenge so that those skills can be completely glossed over and the storytelling can sort of beat whatever was created, because Drag Race does that a lot, kind of softens my bone for this bracket. I was excited for this bracket, and I still am. I'm excited for Denali. I'm excited for the Bettys. And I love the energy that they're bringing already. This group is really fun to me. But let's be real, Denali would never be given the same level of challenge tailoring. Tina, Phoenix, Acid would never be given the same kind of space that Georges and Mistress are given. Even Bosco to some extent in round 1, who didn't get a ton of assistance, but got a little bit in challenges that were, quite frankly, better for her than the others in the room. And let's be so real. Horizontal pre-gathered fabric is not complimentary on anyone. Least of all Ginger Minch, who has a problem presenting garments already. So presenting something that is ugly makes it look even uglier, because she simply doesn't know how to work it. Daya's construction held that group up in the fashion front. And Ginger's storytelling is what ultimately got them the win, because the performance, in the judges' eyes, was more important than what the look was. And that's ultimately what they wanted to see, was a good performance and a good story. And I think that's kind of what's subtly insidious about this tournament-style All-Stars. See, normally we can see that queens like Chad and Alaska's wins are not paved with sewing challenges in the same way that some of the other winners have been given. Monet and Shay's wins are not paved with acting challenges in the same way that other queens' wins are. You get the point, hopefully. Some of the winners that go onto these seasons are given challenges that are tailored to them, but are also restrained from challenges that they are specifically not very good at. And I think it seems a little more overt in some of those other seasons, because everyone is experiencing it everywhere all at once, right? In no world were Tati, Roxy, Adore, Coco, even Alyssa ever going to beat Alaska or Detox or Katya in an acting challenge, in an improv challenge, which is what they got quite a few of in All-Stars 2. So we sort of get activated by that, realizing that the season is sort of a setup. But these brackets are so small and fast that it's sort of easy to look past the hands of production when every single week there's a, look over there! It's 4 points they're managing themselves. Don't look at what we're doing. They're in charge of it. They could beat us if they wanted to. And then every 3 weeks we get a, look over there! There's a new group. And so we sort of forget that production is just as meddlesome in these smaller brackets as they are on a wide scale group, like in All-Stars 2 to All-Stars 9. I don't know why I ignored All-Stars 1, maybe because I forget that that exists. These challenges are so all over the place that they're meant to be a misdirection for how curated they are for certain contestants in the room. When Purple Bracket is over, I would love to run some type of theoretical season where all 18 queens get to participate in every one of these challenges, just to see who I think would do well in the eyes of not only production, but also realistically in these types of challenges for all 9 episodes that show up non-elimination style. Because I would imagine what we would see is that a lot of these specific challenges, like this Wicked one or the Rapping Roast, would not work for 80% of the contestants. And of course, like last bracket, I wonder how people in Pink Team would do in this challenge, or how people in Orange Group would do in this challenge. I wonder how people in Purple Group would do in challenges that Orange got. And I think if some of these challenges were maybe redistributed, it would look less overt that they were pushing one particular person. But that's not what Drag Race is in the business of, and we all know that. As I always say, Drag Race is a TV show first before it is a competition. And maybe it is better TV to hand construct a season so that it is the least cringe possible, that it is just good TV writing from start to finish. I just wish that each group and each contestant got the same amount of space given to them as the front runners. And I want to make it clear that I'm not dumping on Ginger and I'm not diminishing her at all. All of this is to talk specifically about producers and what they are doing. Ginger is really good at Drag Race. We saw her persevere in season 7 and in All Stars 6, despite queens like Kennedy and Raja, Violet and Eureka being notably stronger than she was at a lot of challenges. Again, Ginger is really not the kind of girl who needs assistance getting to the finale. She can do that all on her own. And yet, they seem to be very gently guiding her there. Well, maybe not gently. Even the next challenge being a hoedown challenge, where Ginger is the only Southern belle in this group and had a pretty big narrative moment in her Drag Race journey of being low during a hoedown performance in season 7, reminds me that this bracket is just as hand-tailored for her as bracket 2 was for Mistress and Georges. So with all of this being said, I remind myself once again, this is a TV show. So let's move away from Ginger now. We'll eventually come back to her, I'm sure. I was really offended by that 90s boy band bus driver wig they slapped on Law's head. I think maybe he could sue for that. And Rue's introductory costuming is getting worse every bracket. I know that there's a lot of queens this season and there was probably a big stipend that went out, but is there no budget this season? Some early stories that are bubbling up already from this group is that Denali is the safe queen of season 13. They made a point to show us this montage of her getting safe placements and being kind of bummed about that. And this time she wants her flowers. Will she get them is the question. That montage of her being safe, I think, was to remind us that she's not on the radar. In the same kind of editing style, I think that Irene got. It's possible that Denali could circumvent expectations and end up winning a challenge or two before the end, but I think it is very clear that she's not who they're looking at. Acid wants a win so bad because she never got one in season 8. And I think she easily could have gotten at least one. And honestly, I kind of live for how confrontational she was with Rue. A lot of people see her as this untouchable deity that you just don't clash with at all. And personally, I respect anyone who is willing to butt heads with RuPaul and is not afraid of her authority. Because truly, I don't think Rue sees herself as some beast that you can't approach. I think she sees herself as the queen of drag, but I also think that Rue is humble enough that she doesn't let her ego get in the way if someone maybe comes for her a little bit. Her saying, yeah, you could blame me, I'll take that blame for why Acid didn't get a win, I think is a really good example of Rue not taking any of this too seriously. If Acid feels some kind of way about not getting a win in season 8, I don't think Rue takes that personally, and she can sort of just laugh it off. And I really love how free Acid is coming off this time, because in season 8 she was so restrained and holding back, and I like that she's just being her. Alyssa and Daya are having some early tension because they are season sisters but don't seem to have much in common beyond that. We've seen girls come onto this show who know each other from the same season, but post-show they didn't really ever form a connection or a bond beyond the trauma of being on Drag Race. And that relationship never sticks off the show, so it doesn't stick when they come back. See queens like Blair and Cracker in All Stars 5. Their energy was so puzzling that season because they tried to come in like, ooh, we're sisters, but they had zero chemistry. Even Mayhem's chemistry with the two of them was odd. And this feels very similar, and I don't think Daya's having it, which creates some sparks. And I kinda lived. Last big storyline is that Cynthia is here for redemption first. She said that a lot of people doubt her talents, and I can see that. She flopped literally both seasons that she's already appeared on, and people don't really take her seriously. I kind of feel bad for Cuckoo because I like her weird bonkers energy, but a lot of people are not feeling it. I was hoping that after all this time off the show, people would respond to her, but I think she's just one of those girlies that may be a little bit too much. However, I find her energy charming, and her yassified Joe Pesci All-Stars mug I kinda live for. Denali is giving the hottest boy band member in that confessional look, and I can only imagine that the thirst follows are gonna go so hard, especially considering that she is walking around that workroom showing off that tight little bod of hers. And I absolutely love that she came in on skates again all of these years later, solidifying her brand but upscaling it a bit. Alyssa wearing fisting gloves in her confessional was diabolical, but I was kind of here for it. I'm gonna be hateful. I know that Alyssa considers herself the trade of just about every season, and I think justifiably so. She's very, very cute. But I'm gonna be honest in a messy way. Out of drag, Alyssa looks like someone who would invite me over and then would block me as I was parking because she didn't want to do it anymore, but didn't want to have the responsibility of messaging, actually I've changed my mind. So they just block instead. So the thirst doesn't go as hard for me for that reason, maybe because of prior experiences with people of that attractiveness level. I enjoyed how the queens had a lot of agency over their choices. They could choose their own pairings, as well as the roles, as well as the textiles that they were going to be using. Production could have easily shown their cards a bit more by assigning groups together, by assigning the roles, by even assigning the materials, making sure that some girls got worse fabrics than others. However, giving them just a little bit of agency is that illusion of choice that I'm always talking about on this channel that I do appreciate on some level. Even if it's a minuscule level of choice, they at least get it. However, I do think that the majority of this cast massively overthought and overcomplicated this challenge during the production piece. The brief was, create a witch and a backstory with a partner. That seems pretty straightforward to me. What is your drag superpower? Is it dancing? Is it reading? Is it fashion? Is it being kind to people? What is the essence of that brand? Take that, filter it through a witch, and then build a story around that and figure out how that is a foil to your partner. I feel like each one of these queens has a pretty solid brand, and a lot of this was about branding. And I think if they had just thought a little more specifically and narrowly into who they are, I think the walls of this challenge would have opened up more and they would have been able to see the very clear door to the exit at the end of it. However, the mass of this group tried to do way too much. Did it all work out in the end? Yes, absolutely. But the road there was, I think, a lot bumpier than it ought to have been. In the workroom, I've got to say that Daya is such great TV, and I would argue one of the better villains in the franchise in a way that Mistress certainly is not. Because Daya is not forcing any storylines or narratives to happen. She simply says what's on her mind and is unapologetic about those opinions. And from someone who also rubs people wrong by my own personal opinions, that's a very quick way to ruffle feathers, but Daya just says it. Her saying in her confessional, Alyssa called me a bitch. I've been called way worse by way better, was so genuinely rotten and hilarious at the same time. And it sort of immediately establishes from my perspective that she's not here to placate fans. She's gonna say what's on her mind at any given moment and not worry about filtering those opinions through if anybody likes it or not. If you don't like her, then move on and find someone that you do like. She stirred the pot of soup a little bit with Alyssa, specifically with asking, are you bothered that I didn't want to work with you? But I don't think she was trying to do so maliciously. I think she was just trying to make sure that the room was feeling okay to progress in the challenge and that there wouldn't be any awkwardness. She's not coming across forced in a manner like Mistress was, or like a lot of other TV villains on this show have been. And I gotta say, I think Daya not wanting to work with Alyssa was a genuine strategy masked with something else. I think Daya recognizes that Ginger is the one that is likely moving on to bracket 2. This is a duo challenge and will likely be judged as teams. So if I were being competitive, I would hitch my cart to whatever pony I thought would bring me to the next round. And this is something we've seen happen in other All-Stars, where the clear and obvious frontrunner has their horse attached to by somebody else's carriage, and sometimes they're really not able to back up the skills of the frontrunner. Sometimes they're in Alyssa to the Alaska, and they do-ah their way through the scene and flop miserably. And then other times they're the Latrice who's able to keep up with what Trinity is doing. I think it is very clear to anyone who has ever watched Drag Race that the producers of the US seasons are not kind to Latinos. And as a Latino, they treat them like jokes. And they're certainly not kind in the edits. In no world did I think that Cynthia would ever win a design challenge, let alone a character challenge. I think it is possible that Alyssa could have won a sewing challenge, but not a character challenge. But being together made it so clear that they were not going to win this one because of the way that producers treat the Latino community, specifically the Puerto Ricans that come onto the show. However, in some alternate universe, I like to imagine that Acid and Daya got together, and then Denali gets with Alyssa, leaving Cynthia with Ginger, in which scenario Ruth, Paul, and producers would have to jump through so many mental hurdles in order to give the win to Glamour, Toad, and Cuckoo. And the thought of that has me in shambles. Because I do think that this challenge was probably slated for Ginger to win, and I think they would have found some way to do it. God, that would be such an awful look. There were a lot of strong, genuine moments of joy for me this week, and while I hate being able to see the messy hands of production, I really enjoyed the light that's behind this group. They all seem so happy and cheerful just to be in that room. Acid has been out of this room for like 10 years now. Daya and Ginger still have so much Drag Race joy. Cynthia and Alyssa are in their own universe, so I think they're just happy to be able to compete again. And Denali is here for the ride, and maybe to renew her status as a longtime fan favorite, which I think she's already accomplishing that. Denali having this homosexual joy about Cynthia and Ari being in the workroom brought a smile to my face like I wasn't expecting. I think for a lot of queer folks, we don't see a world where we get to just be happy and experience joy. And Denali got to have this really cool moment that's gonna be immortalized forever. And I think that's pretty cool. Her clocking that this would be a social game makes me think that she might play this better than Tina or Olivia did. Because neither one of them played the social game well, but at all. And I don't think Candy or Lala played the social game very well in All Stars 8. The season 13 girlies seem to be pretty bad at the social elements of Drag Race. And at this early stage, I can't tell if Denali is going to be similar. She's a smart cookie though, and the fact that she logicked this out before it was even said makes me think that she is going to start mentally prepping for that moment. And so I am excited to see how she navigates that piece next week. And maybe she'll navigate the point distribution in a way that Olivia and Tina just flubbed at doing. I think strategically and harshly, Acid and Alyssa seem like the most likely to not win any challenges in the next two brackets. Therefore, we'll have 6 points between each of them that they will get to distribute. I would try and hitch my cart to one of them in hopes that I'll win at least the social game and get some stars from them if I'm not gonna get it from the judges. Let's finally get into this challenge, where I wanna break up my judgment into two categories: design and story, because those seem to be the big pillars this week. Daya had a great design and finished product. The feathers in that V shape were such an interesting way of representing air, and I loved the overall construction of this garment. That Grace Jones hood over that kind of shoddy wig was so visually interesting. I loved the black contacts and that severe makeup with that half eyebrow. Most importantly, I loved that color swatch that she picked. Her physicality I enjoyed a lot in the performance aspect. She looked like she was one with the wind, and I really enjoyed that. However, Daya's script wasn't that interesting if I'm being real. It was smooth and it was good, but it wasn't groundbreaking. Not that it needed to be, but I don't think it made me gag in the same way that her costuming did. However, I liked the voice that she chose for that character. It was really stern in stark contrast to Ginger's bubbliness. And so for me, I think she excelled in the design pillar over the story pillar, but her story pillar was still good. Ginger's look was pure evil. A basic curved neckline with a mess of connecting train fabric was not that special in my opinion. And I know I've already said it, but I'll reiterate again. Horizontal lines. Diabolical. So she flubbed on the design element, for me, because I just didn't like the textile she picked. But I think her story and comedy was funny. Seamen, water sports, and condensation are really lowball jokes but work well for RuPaul. And where I think Daya held this group together in its fashion, I think that Ginger held this group together in story. And I truly don't think that either one of them could have done this without each other. They sort of made up for each other's differences in a lot of really spectacular ways. I don't think Daya would have had as good of a story, and I don't think Ginger would have had a look that was put on her body. I don't want to say as good of a look because it wasn't good. For Ginger, it was okay. Based on the parameters of the assignment, this team did exactly what was asked of them. Create a witch and a backstory and figure out how to present that on the runway. The fashion seemed to sort of be a backseat, and with that in mind, Ginger's outfit reflected that. It was presented excellently though, which is exactly what the judges wanted to see. That's why Trinity won that Princess Design Challenge in season 9, not because it was the best constructed garment of that runway, but because she had the best story. The story and the comedy in the judge's opinion, was more impactful than the design. Was Ginger's story that interesting though? No. This sister who likes to blow and this sister who likes semen was all very haha tongue-in-cheek. However, I do want to give some props to Ginger specifically for this story, and specifically for exploring outside of her usual lanes for it. Ginger's drag is typically very safe for work, family-friendly, house of love. We've seen that all the way back to season 7. Her cow character, which was all about meat jokes and burger jokes. And then her Southern Belle in All-Star 6, which was all about just being kind and lovely to people. And so to hear her make cum jokes, I think was an absolute departure from what she normally does on Drag Race and normally does in her drag presentation. And so I do want to give her props for exploring outside of that and doing something unexpected for Ginger Minj. Cynthia and Alyssa were kind of complicated story-wise, and to me they came across more like a Jenny Lorenzo skit. Like, I could see Alyssa's character being Laritza and Cynthia's character being like Abuela. I think design-wise it was very impressive for another design challenge. I loved the shape of both of their garments. I loved the construction and the use of structure. And I wasn't bothered by the cardboard in the same way that RuPaul was, because it really wasn't that big of an issue. However, to me, they were less witchy and more Halloween costume for a YouTube sketch. And I liked them, but again, for a different challenge. I think they were both strong in design and story, but I think at the end of the day, they didn't really nail the witchy thing. Witches can be anyone and anything, so I think going in a familial direction was a good decision. Everybody else did sisters, and they chose to go auntie and niece. I think there's something special about that that stands out. My question mark was why they were dressed as skins for Fortnite or something. They're costuming Red video game character. Acid and Denali tackled this like a drag number, where you've got the entire audio playing before the queen saunters out to some high beat banger number. I loved how ditzy Denali came off, and Acid came off like a sister who was genuinely very annoyed that her sister was the favored one. Their story had cool resolve at the end, which I think completed the story, and I think Ari and Cynthia really connected to that in particular. That being said, they thrived in story over design, which is kind of what it seemed like Ginger also won for. Acid's look wasn't particularly groundbreaking. I wasn't living for Law's critiques about the safety pin. I thought the draping was fine. It just looked like something that Acid's already done. I could swear she did that draping effect for her Moneyball look in season 8. And Denali's look unfortunately wasn't particularly eye-catching. They were both very simplistic, but I think I liked Denali's look maybe a bit more because it was quite clean. They were both very Disney-esque in their earnest approach to this challenge. I still don't quite understand why these girls got into marketing. I mean, I get it. Volcanoes are where you grow coffee beans and ice you put into coffee to cool it down or whatever. But their choice to start a small business at the end of this story was a little bit of a head-scratcher question mark. And maybe felt a little bit millennial contrived. Look, we learned how to love each other now. So now we're gonna tie up all our finances into a brick and mortar shop. I didn't gag over Acid's dress, but I didn't gag over Ginger's either. And the judges loved that dress. I think this easily could have been judged individually and broken up the pairing, but then it would have completely undermined the entire purpose of making this a duo challenge, was so that Ginger could get a win early and secure some points before the competition even got rolling too far. I think easily Denali and Daya could have been the top two, because in my opinion, they were the strongest of the bunch, story-wise and visually. I think Alyssa and Cynthia could have won if this challenge was about superheroes or family resemblance or something in that line. Ginger, however, was high for me because her story was really good, despite that outfit being dookie dog water poop. And so that's kind of the rub of it all. They're judged on both parameters, and realistically, Daya and Ginger uplifted each other in ways that the other groups didn't. And that's why I say that Ginger didn't need help to get here, because I think that her presentation of that poo-poo look was just as strong as people who did a great look but had a bad story. You can look great, but if you don't have a good reason for why you look that way, it's not gonna translate well on the runway. Meanwhile, there are queens who look bad constantly, but deliver it in such a fabulous way that you have to give it props. Look at Spanky Jackson in Down Under 2. Did Ginger excel in the design element? Absolutely freaking not. But her story was good and that made her one of the better presenters. If this was just a Make-A-Witch look solo, not involving anybody else, I still think that Ginger would have been high. And I think this challenge seems so easy to judge and very straightforward, but it's also really murky at the same time because they added that pillar of storytelling. And also I think if this were a mid-season challenge, I would feel less conflicted about it. But starting off the bracket with pairings when none of the other groups had that as their first challenge, I think does make me raise an eyebrow and again sort of highlights that production really is meddling this particular bracket in a way that was obvious in bracket pink. Ginger and Daya are the top two this week and have to lip sync to Defying Gravity, but the OBC version. Of the entire 2-minute song, I did some math. Ginger got 43 seconds of lingering on camera close-ups, where Daya only got 28 seconds. The remaining time was split between either lingering on both of them, specifically panning more into Ginger's direction, with Daya sort of being up in the upper half of the screen, split also with the judges. And when you look at those numbers, it's kind of frustrating. This group is really fun and joyful, but I can already see the writing on the walls and what's happening, and that makes me enjoy it just slightly less. And making the next challenge something that is also in Ginger's wheelhouse and clearly outside of what everyone else does also kind of is disheartening. And it's only because I wish that everybody got the same amount of space as the front runners. So what did you think? Who won this challenge for you? Who won the lip sync? For me, it was actually Daya. I thought that her presentation of Defying Gravity was so much more impactful. Ginger parked and barked, which I think was fine, but I didn't really connect with what she was doing in the same way that I was connecting with what Daya did. She had this wind underneath her, which worked well with not only her story of being this witch of the wind, but also worked well for what Elphaba is experiencing in that song. What do you think's gonna happen next week with NBQ? I already see a situation where probably everyone's gonna end up with 1 point and it'll be Kumbaya girls. And for the hoedown challenge, I mean, it's very clearly a Ginger lock. I'm gonna hold out hope that Denali will be able to do something good here. And we're just gonna pray. Because I wanna see my girl Denali make it to the second group. Because I need to know what she's gonna do for Snatch Game. Because that JVN was so good. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel in a different way, you can join Extravaganza Extra, which is right down there by that subscribe button. And you can watch some of my posted videos a few days earlier than the general public. Also, if you would like to, follow me on Bluesky. The links should be below. I don't really post much on Twitter these days, but you're more than welcome to follow over there. Take care of yourselves, enjoy your week. Make sure to check out my Drag Race podcast where we are finishing up Drag Race France Season 1 this Sunday. And I will see y'all in the flip.